sit back down and get your microphone where it's actually going to be, and go from there.
Okay.
Well, the camera's not straight.
Yeah. We need wide, a little bit wider too.
First, you need to straighten the camera. No. No.
That's not it?
No. The camera's not, it's pointed, it's crooked, it's pointing this way. I still don't think it's straight. Alright. It's probably straight now, but it probably needs to go a little bit this way. So you gotta move the whole tripod over. Alright, sit down. You go scoot over. Can you move those things down?
Down. Do you want to put them up, or we're just going to show them?
Halfwheel's pre-show coverage of the 2018 IPCPR Convention and Trade Show is sponsored by Drew Estate, the rebirth of cigars.
All right, I believe that we are now live from the Halfwheel office. My name is Charlie Minato.
I'm Brooks Whittington.
And welcome to Halfwheel's pre-show coverage, hopefully, of the 2018 IPCPR Convention and Trade Show, which, in case you didn't hear Patrick's voice, is brought to you by Drew Estate. So Patrick is sort of here virtually with us. He'll be monitoring the comment section for a contest, which Brooks will get to in a second. But some housekeeping notes before we start. So this is the first of 5 planned shows that we have for the pre-show coverage from the office. This is sort of the inside baseball one. This is going to be very industry focused. It's also going to be something that if you are not in the cigar industry, even if you are a very passionate, self-proclaimed cigar geek, this might be a little bit hard to follow at times. I'm going to try to explain things as we go along, but it's very technical and very related to the industry. These are the 10 changes that we see, at least at the 2018 IPCPR Convention and Trade Show. The good news is that the next 4 will be a lot easier to follow along. So you'll have things like 5 cigars that we're looking forward to, 5 accessories that we're looking forward to, the booths that we want to go see first, etc. Things that if you're a cigar smoker, you certainly will enjoy. The other good news is that we're giving away some things, so including in this one, so there's at least some reason for you to stick around. Now, we also have another live show before the trade show part of the IPCPR Convention Trade Show begins, which will be on Friday, July 13th. It will be in the afternoon, and it's hosted live from the trade show floor. We have, I believe, over a dozen guests scheduled to come on, and we'll have short interviews with them. We'll take your questions and those sorts of things. And we also have a lot of giveaways for that as well. So if you want to see sort of the big 2.5-hour crazy guest, those sorts of things, that's on July 13th, which is the day before the trade show starts. In addition, we'll have Facebook Lives the morning of each of the first 3 days of the trade show. We don't have a guest for the 3rd day yet, Brooks, but
I'm sure we'll find one.
I'm sure we will. We'll have Davidoff on Saturday, which is the first day, and then Drew Newman will be on from JC Newman on Sunday, and he'll be there to talk about his new project, The American. And that, I believe, covers all of our... Oh, and we'll have daily Facebook Lives after the trade show floor, so you'll see how miserable Brooks looks after walking around Las Vegas for a day.
More miserable than now,
Yeah,
presumably.
Debatable. And I think that covers all of our housekeeping notes. Let me turn something off because I'm getting a bit of feedback. All right, hopefully that's better for us. And perhaps you. I don't think the mic was picking that up, though. If you're watching this on our site, hopefully Patrick has adjusted the video from the technical issues we were having trying to set this up. If you're watching it on YouTube, that means you also probably have the YouTube feed. If you're watching it on Facebook, surprisingly, you have the Facebook feed. And unfortunately, the Facebook feed is in 720p, and it's not even great 720p. It's quite blurry, and I think that looking at it now, that might be an understatement. We have tried our best. This is a Facebook limitation. The YouTube feed is in 1080p, so it's a lot better looking. So if you want the best quality to see Brooks and I's face or to try to make out the cigars in our background, then I would recommend going to YouTube. However, we're going to host the contest via the Facebook Live comment section, so I would suggest if you want to win the prize, which Brooks is about to explain, you stick around on Facebook. This is not some sort of ploy to get multiple page views. Rather, this is trying to provide you the best quality, but also running the contest. Our YouTube audience is nowhere close to our Facebook audience, so it seems better to run that on there. So, Brooks, what are we giving away? Do you even know what we're giving away?
I have no idea what we're giving away.
All right. So Brooks was told to bring some things to the office today, and do you want to show the first one of those?
Absolutely.
So we are giving away, I actually don't know exactly what we're giving away.
We're giving these away?
We're not giving those away.
Oh.
So what, Brooks, you want to explain where that came from?
Yes. So about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It says 2012, so maybe a little longer than that. We went to a media trip to Drew Estate and looked at the whole factory and all the stuff they had there. And I went and talked to JD at some point in the office. And
that came from the trip, not the trade show?
Not the trade show, no.
Oh, but they did give some of those.
They
out
did,
at-
absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
So do you want to explain that? Because that's kind of where we're leading to.
Okay, so you don't care about this one at all?
No, I
Because
mean,
it's a
I
funny
do.
story. I mean,
Sure, but
okay.
do you want to explain where most people would have gotten something like that from?
So basically, the trade show they started doing specific ones, the cigar molds, and the Subculture Studio did custom specific art on these molds and gave them away specifically for retailers and people who came into the booth, things of that nature. They do something different every year. One year was sneakers. One year was these. Another year, last year, in fact, they did the.
Don't slam it on the table.
Sorry. All right. They did the. Was that slamming? Okay. All right. They did a. Skateboard, yes. I should know what that is, and I don't, apparently. They did skateboards with specific art on them, things of that nature. Very, very cool. Subculture Studios is
a lot of art on the back, too.
Is pretty awesome, and they do good work.
You
gotta
YouTube it.
Okay.
Yeah, see, look at how much better
All
that
right.
is. Anyway, so
good stuff.
This is a League of Nine skateboard. I believe I've ridden this through the office.
You did, yeah. Not the office. I think it was at the IPCPR show, but it held up very well.
All right. So anyway, every year, as Brooks said, Drew Estate and Subculture Studios, which is their art studio in Nicaragua, it's right outside their factory. If you ever go on Cigar Safari, you'll get to hang out with Jesse and see all the artists, and they'll make tons of stuff for you. Every year, they bring prizes or gifts for the retailers that place orders at the trade show, and Brooks named off a few of them: the shoes, which they did actually multiple times. They did hard hats, the skateboards, water towers, chevettes, all sorts of things. So Drew Estate
Tobacco leaves. They did that one year.
They did
Yes.
do that. So Drew Estate is been gracious enough to give us 5 of them to give away, one for each of the videos. Now, there are a lot of things that we are not going to find out about before the trade show, and this is one of them. They keep it very much under wraps because they like to surprise people. And so I don't know what the item is, and I also don't know like what themes we have been given, but we've been given 5 of them to give away. So the winner of this contest will win one of them. It goes without saying that because the prizes aren't going, the actual ones for retailers won't be shown off until the trade show starts. You're not going to get it until after the trade show, so it probably won't arrive until about August. But it's a very cool prize, and normally you would have to go to the trade show and place an order to get one, or I guess steal one. But
Right off on one.
5 of you will get the chance to win it, whatever it is.
It will have something to do with Drew Estate.
And it will be painted and very cool. All right. So I think that's the contest. If you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. Patrick is answering questions and also feeding them back over to us. The easiest way to win it is just leave a comment. We have written down a number before. If you are the Xth commenter, so if the number was, say, 100, it's not. If you were the 100th commenter, you would be the winner of the prize, and we will announce it probably after the video ends. Probably not on video because I don't think anyone wants to watch me count comments on the video. Once again, it's only on Facebook, so you need to leave the comment section on the comment section on Facebook Live. You can enter as many times as you want, but it's not the comment, it's the commenter. So it's not the 20th comment, it's the 20th commenter. So I guess go make a whole bunch of fake Facebook accounts if you want to manipulate it. And all of the rules and other things are on the site. If you have questions for us, we will get to them at the end, and so Patrick will keep track of them and send them over. And I think with that, I think that we are done with the housekeeping list.
Awesome.
Except we have to clean the studio at some point. Anyway, so let's move over to this. And the first of what are the 10 largest changes that I could come up with about the trade show, because there's not a ton of them, is that it's on the weekend this year. Now, for those of you that don't know what the IPCPR Convention Trade Show is, we have a whole article about it. It's called What is IPCPR 2018? We've done this a few years, and the short of it is that the trade show is the cigar industry's probably most important event. It happens each year during the summer. It's a 4-day event in terms of the trade show component, which sees retailers, media, suppliers, and other people go into a trade show floor. The retailers are there to place orders. The media people are there to do what, Brooks?
Take free samples.
Yeah, which is apparently not allowed. But and then there's suppliers. It's a big networking event as well, but it's mainly about new products and big discounts for the retailers. And so there's also a 5th day, which is the the first day, which is this year is on Friday, July 13th, which is the more of a convention day. There's some seminars. They're going to do the preview of the documentary Hand Rolled, which is about the cigar industry. But really, most people consider day one to be the first day the trade show floor opens. It's open for 4 days, 3 full days, and then 1 half day that most people don't show up to, except us, because we have booths that we missed. And the entire cigar industry, minus the Cubans, are essentially there. There's most of the American retailers, certainly all of the big retailers, all of the ones that get exclusive products and those sorts of things are pretty much all there. A lot of the larger international retailers show up. A lot of international suppliers and distributors show up. Once again, the one exception is the Cuban world, because of the embargo, does not show up. Now, the trade show last year ran Monday through Thursday. This year, it's going to start on Saturday and then end on Tuesday. And the belief here is that many of the retailers would much prefer to just come for the weekend. That way, they aren't missing weekdays for whatever reason. A lot of retailers, people that own shops, if they take days off during the week, usually it's during the weekend. And so for them, it's a lot easier to go on the weekend. And the IPCPR certainly believes that moving the show to the weekend is something that should help drive up retailer attendance, which is always the big conversation that we have leading up to the trade show, at the trade show, after the trade show. People like to complain about attendance, right, Brooks?
It does happen quite a bit. Even if attendance is up, presumably according to IPCPR, it's still...
Well, last year they claimed it was down.
Yes, but even if it is up, they still hear, number of people say that it looks dead, it looks empty, it looks, whatever it is. So, people like to complain. I'm interested to see about the Saturday and the Sunday, if it actually works. I don't remember the last time it was on a weekend. Do you? I'm going to assume you do.
I don't know the last time it was on a weekend. I don't think we've had a trade show start on a Saturday in a while. I feel like we've had shows run Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But, we certainly were in Vegas a couple years ago where the trade show was starting. I think one year it started on a Sunday. But no, the Saturday, Sunday thing is unique. That's something I don't think the IPCPR has necessarily been able to get. I'm also curious just to see what Monday looks like, because the whole theory here is that people want to show up for the weekend and then basically go home Sunday night or Monday morning. Obviously, every year we see the big drop-off from day 3 to day 4. Is there going to be another noticeable drop-off from day 2 to day 3? Because what we noticed last year was that day 1 was probably the least attended of the first 3 days. It seemed like more people were coming to Vegas as the week went on, and that's certainly been the case at other trade shows as well.
I would be willing to bet that the drop-off, as you mentioned, from day 3 to day 4 is quite significant. I would be willing to bet that it's probably going to be even worse this year as well.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's the same. I think the question is...
I'll bet you $1.
We'll see. The problem is the IPCPR doesn't scan tickets every day, so we have no clue what the attendance is. But I think that I'm not sure that it's going to be as bad, because I think that there's going to be a lot less people there on day 3 to begin with, and so the curve might just look a little bit different. I don't think there's going to be any more people there on day 4 compared to what there was last year or any of the years that at least I've been going to the trade show, because it's always a dead day. But very helpful for us, as long as you're not taking down your booth early. All right. Anything else on days of the week?
No, I find it interesting that they decided to do this, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah. All right. So let me move over the weekend and moving on to the non-drink segment of our list. Increased booth costs. So last year, the IPCPR announced that for the 2018 trade show, it would raise the cost of booths $3 per square foot across the board. And as with everything related to the IPCPR, that led to a lot of people complaining about it, because it's the IPCPR convention and trade show. So this year, it's going to be interesting to see. I oddly have not. Have you heard any complaints since they announced it, which was like way back in late 2017?
I have not. I think that people probably expected it and are probably not very surprised about it.
But you haven't heard anyone like complaining as you've been contacting companies of late, like being like, "Oh, I can't believe they increased the cost of the trade show. I can roll a bowling ball down the aisle, blah 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 blah." It hasn't been part of that general.
Nothing
complaint.
like that. No.
Yeah, I haven't heard it either, and I find that interesting because, once again, people like to complain about everything related to the IPCPR convention and trade show, and this would seemingly be an easy one to do that with. The IPCPR pointed out when it raised its rates that the 2 other most comparable American trade shows, which would be, I guess, TP and NACS, because NATO's no longer around, charge significantly more money for their trade shows than what the IPCPR did, and they claimed that it was something that was necessary to sort of get them in line with what most trade shows charge. I've tried to contact the IPCPR to figure out roughly how much additional money that's going to generate for the organization. They have not been willing to provide me with the square footage numbers, but certainly, $3, it's going to go a long way because the IPCPR sells a lot of convention space. I will say this, though. The IPCPR is likely paying a lot more for the venue at the Las Vegas Convention Center than they do when it's at the Venetian and Sands. And so they obviously didn't anticipate being there last year. It was moved out of the Venetian. They were sort of forced to go into the Las Vegas Convention Center. I'm sure they got paid decently by the Venetian to leave the contract. But their costs are certainly higher, and the basic economics are the Venetian is a big hotel. It's the second largest hotel in the world, actually. They have restaurants, they have gambling, they have all sorts of things that helps to subsidize the convention. So the Venetian's whole business model is built on this idea that you come in for a convention, you don't ever leave the property, you spend a lot of money in here, and so everything tends to be cheaper for the convention. The convention floor is cheaper, the staff's cheaper, the food is substantially cheaper than what the Las Vegas Convention Center wants to charge, because the Las Vegas Convention Center is owned by the city, and there's no official hotel attached to it, so they can't make any of that money back, and as such, it's a bit more expensive, despite it not really being any better. But we're going back to the Venetian next year, right, Brooks?
I love the Venetian. Wonderful place.
Venetian or the Palazzo? Which one do you like more? Although they've changed. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the downstairs floor of the Palazzo has been completely renovated.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I hate it now.
You walk in there, and you've obviously been to the Palazzo plenty of times, and I walked in there in January for when I was there for TPE, and I was completely lost because all of the bearings that you have, like once you get outside of the walls and the ceilings that are painted to look like the sky, all of your bearings go away immediately.
Well, I'm interested to see how that looks. I think that I can probably figure my way through just based on my inner sense of direction, which is awesome.
I'm sure. All right. So let's get to number 3. So number 3 is that the booth sizes are changing. Now, when I originally started looking at this list to figure out kind of what it was like, my assumption was that booths were getting smaller because that seemed to go in line with the cost of Exhibitor going up and some other changes that have been going on for a while. But it turns out that there are some people that are increasing and some people that are decreasing. And we'll start with the behemoth as far as how this conversation goes, and that is Davidoff. So Davidoff is reducing their booth quite a bit. They're going from 8,000 square feet last year to 5,600 square feet, which is a 30% reduction for the math inclined. And 2,400 square feet, to give you an idea, is basically the size of the Nat Sherman and the Zycar booths put together. So it is a substantial decrease that Davidoff is doing. I was told by Davidoff that the reason why they were doing it was because the cost of shipping the booth and then what we refer to as drayage, which is moving the booth basically from the loading dock to where it needs to go on the show floor, which is super expensive. The savings that they could have just by reducing the weight of the booth were enough to offset the cost of, it was cheaper to just buy a new booth. And so they did that. They're still one of the larger booths on the trade show floor, but they are not anywhere close to as large. It was them and Drew Estate were the two largest, and then there was a pretty substantial drop off before we got to General Altadas. That's no longer going to be the case, although Davidoff's 5,600 square feet is still quite a bit more than everyone else. Now, there are some other booths that are also declining, or downsizing, however you want to look at it. One of them is Cas Fernandez, which is now known as Aganorsa Leaf. Their booth is going from 2,000 square feet to 800 square feet. Now, one of the reasons why that's happening is because they've had in the past, they've had other people in their booth, and they aren't going to have them this year, from what we can at least tell. Some other smaller ones, Curavari and Villiger are both going to decline or downsize their booth by 400 square feet, and that's sort of it. There's some other smaller booths that are changing in sizes, but in terms of the downsizing, it's really Davidoff and then Cas Fernandez, although in the case of Cas Fernandez, that space is going elsewhere. Warped, it looks like, has their own booth. I believe that Sindicato, who's previously been in Cas Fernandez's booth, is now in in a different booth. I think they're actually part of the Gurkha booth space buying. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be physically in the Gurkha booth. It just means that Gurkha's bought a certain amount of space, and they're going to put their own little booth, not little, but they're going to put their booth on the side or on a different part of the Gurkha space. It won't be within the Gurkha booth. Now, in terms of increasing space, Altadas is got a pretty big increase. They're going to add 1,000 feet, so that's 5,000 to 6,000 square feet this year. Altadis' booth had seemingly always been a bit smaller than its peers. As I mentioned, the Davidoff booth was always bigger. The Drew Estate booth's been bigger. Even the General booth seemed a lot larger than Altadis, so they're adding 1,000 square feet. I don't know if that has to necessarily do with Rafi Nadal. They've got aging room now, which they previously did not have. It was there last year, but in prior years, aging room had its own booth, and it was probably a little bit larger than 1,000 square feet, if my memory serves me correct. So that makes sense. Quesada's booth added 300 square feet. I'm not entirely sure what that's about, but we'll see, because they have less people, I think, in their booth this year. And then one of the largest increase, I think, percentage-wise, is probably Romacraft, who's going from 800 square feet to 1,500 square feet. Should be noted that's not all Romacraft. That includes Pastowny, Chowee, Fable, FQ Cigars. Missing anyone, Brooks?
Nope.
I feel like I probably am missing someone. But that includes all the brands that are distributed under the Pospiech, if I'm pronouncing that one correctly, which is questionable, distribution arm, which is the Pastowny guys, and the companies that they distribute. So those are the changing in the booth sizes, and we will get off of my face and on to question number 4, maybe. So there's some other changes to the trade show floor, and I'm going to guess that I'm probably the only one outside of the IPCPR that has really looked at this. But the trade show is going to be a bit closer to the front. What does that mean, Brooks?
That means less walking.
That does mean less walking. You got that one. We didn't even rehearse that. So it's a bit closer to the front. It's certainly further away from the back. I don't think the trade show, in terms of the north-south, if that's how you want to look at it, I don't know what the actual direction is once we get in the convention center. But from the top to the bottom, I don't know if that distance has changed at all. It's more just shifted forward. So there's more space at the back of the trade show, less space at the front of the trade show. There is a gigantic food court on the top left-hand corner. It looks to be, from the map, and you look at a comparable booth, it looks to be somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. That's on top of the food courts that were there last year. So if you are in the cigar industry, and you were at the trade show last year, you'll remember that if you walked over towards one side, sort of where a lot of the smaller companies were, Romacraft was over there, Plasencia was there, M. Bombay was there. Anyone else you remember?
Boveda was there, I believe, close by there.
HVC was down there. But at one end of the show, there was a whole bunch of food court items. All of those are there, and then there's a lot more space than there was last year. Sorry. And finally, there's no Cigars and Spirits Lounge, as far as I can tell, on the show floor. I always found that curious, because that's a lot of money. I don't know how Cigars and Spirits did that, but I mean, I can't imagine it was profitable, given how much space they had. And I don't know what you got out of it. Because did you ever go in there, Brooks?
No, I didn't.
I went in there one time to have a meeting, because they had nice big leather chairs. And I think they had free booze or some sort of alcohol.
Spirits of some sort?
Yeah, there was some. Yeah,
perhaps.
Yeah, thanks. But they weren't giving out free cigars because the FDA says no. FDA. But no, the Cigars and Spirits Lounge does not appear to be on the trade show floor. That was the only other thing I could find at this. Anything you want to see on the trade show floor besides less booths?
Yeah, I'd love to see a Cigars and Spirits Lounge. I think that'd be a really good improvement.
You know, it's interesting at TPE. You've edited this picture, so you've seen some of this. They have last year they had a whole arcade set up and gigantic Connect 4 boards. And this year they had the tightrope walking things. I forget what else they have singers and stuff. I'm always fascinated by that to see. TPE, it makes a little bit more sense. I don't know how the tightrope walking thing would go over at our trade show. I feel like that would result in some paramedics.
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to sign something before doing that.
No, it was just there wasn't. I mean, there were instructors there some of the time, but otherwise it was just left out. You just want to go walk up. But it sort of makes sense at that trade show. It's a lot younger demographic, a lot more e-cigarette companies. But I'm curious to know what the cost is for TPE to do that, because I don't know. You wouldn't. I mean, it wouldn't be good for Half-Wheel's productivity, but a Miss Pac-Man, arcade game would be something I would imagine you would enjoy.
Well, I don't know why you said Miss Pac-Man instead of Pac-Man, but
Isn't
yes,
Pac-Man, more fun. It's a little bit more complicated.
No, you just go with the classic, buddy. Come on. Oh. You wouldn't know, fucking millennial.
Please don't swear.
Sorry.
YouTube will get us banned. All right. So, now that we've done that, hope this is in order because it seems to. No, we seem to have skipped a company something. So let's. Are we still here? Yeah, no, we've skipped something, I feel like. All right, so one thing that people have questions about is, because we've talked about booth prices going up, we've talked about some booths getting smaller, some getting larger. I did run the numbers as far as we could tell. So in 2017, the finalist had 240 exhibitors listed. That's not 240 cigar companies. That includes the people selling massage chairs and the pipe companies and
Socks,
hats, God knows what else. So it was 240, and it's now at 212 for 2018. Now, it's not a complete list, and we do know there are some companies, I know you've been in contact with quite a few of them, actually, who are saying, like, we're still kind of figuring out where our booth's going to be, but we are going to be at the trade show. I'm sure some of them will be, and I'm sure a couple of them won't be. So I imagine that number will go up. I can't imagine they're going to add 28 more booths in 2.5 weeks, but I guess stranger things have happened. So then the number is declining a bit. It's still substantially, it's not a substantial decline, and I think it's still an increase over kind of where the show was 10 years ago, which is something that I always point out to people when they say I could roll a bowling ball down the aisle and not hit anyone, which is that the trade show has gotten substantially larger, and it's only now started to contract over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of the amount of space, the amount of companies, the amount of booths, which means that, when there's 75, 80 cigar companies versus 150 cigar companies, there's a lot more places for people to be other than walking down the aisles of the trade show floor. And so while we certainly at Half Wheel aren't encouraging anyone to go out of business, and we don't want to see that happen, it does make it easier on our end for our trade show coverage when we have less people there. Not less retailers, but less manufacturers and less exhibitors. And so I think we're beginning to see some shifts away from having a whole bunch of random companies where you sort of wonder what they're doing at the trade show showing up. And we've also got some companies this year, and we'll get to the numbers specifically in a second, but we're also seeing some more established companies, names that, I think most of our viewers probably are familiar with, that aren't going to be at the trade show, which is the latter is concerning. But I mean, Brooks, what would you say? You run into 8 or 9 companies a year where you have no clue who they are?
Yeah, at least. I think that it's pretty obvious what they do, but I don't know why they're there. It seems like that they would have to make quite a bit of money in order to make back what they're trying to spend. But I think that they wouldn't be there if they didn't think they could turn a profit, perhaps, at least at some point. We'll see. I mean, like you said, I'm interested to see if the Sox are there and the other companies like that have virtually nothing to do with cigars. I'm interested to see if there are as many people there.
There was a gourmet popcorn booth at TPE.
Really?
It was good. I mean, but I don't know if it was good for gourmet popcorn. I don't really have that much experience with gourmet popcorn, but it was really good popcorn.
That's pretty awesome. Now, why can't they have that there?
Well, because at TPE they're also selling marijuana accessories. So gourmet popcorn goes very much in line.
Touche. Yeah. I mean, they should have a marijuana booth there. That'd be awesome.
They kicked all those e-cigarette people out a couple years ago, which I disagreed with. I always thought that they should take the e-cigarette people's money and
take anybody's money.
Well, I don't think we want to take anyone's money, but I don't
almost.
But they kicked all the e-cigarette people out. Remember, they put the hookah people all in one little pavilion,
Indeed.
and I understand the arguments that came from the members. It was not the IPCPR, like the people that work in the office in Washington, D.C. that were making those decisions. It was the board and a lot of their members that were complaining about it. I understand why they didn't want them there, but from a financial perspective, like if you want to just put them all in one corner, so be it, and take their money, and we just won't walk to that corner.
They're easy to ignore.
Yeah. Plus their booths were always interesting. You get 2-story booths, and
do they have some hot women outside of it too, typically? Hookah booths?
They certainly hired more booth models, I will put it that way. We leave the judging women up to Stogie Review.
I'm married, so I wouldn't know.
And then I get put
Love
in
you, dear.
post because of my hair. All right. So back onto some sort of order here. So I think we're in the right place. So last year, Brooks, for the first time, we did a list of companies that had told us they weren't going to be there, and a list of companies that told us that they weren't going to have anything new at the trade show. So we're doing those lists again. I would say, before we get to the numbers, that perhaps this year, take these with a grain of salt because we are tracking these a little bit more. So we'll go over the people with nothing new here. So last year, there was 14 companies that told us before the show that they weren't going to have any new products. And this year, that number is already at 24 and is probably going to continue. I mean, it will continue to go up. I'm sure that one or two of the companies, at least, that are on that list will, in fact, bring something new because that's what happens at the trade show. But that's a pretty startling difference. And to give you an idea, we contact about 150, 160 companies. So it's a decent, recognizable percentage there. Of people that are saying that they're not going to have anything new at the trade show. And I think more importantly, there's some big names on there. So Ashton and Oliva are the two that stand out as saying that they're not going to have anything new. I would point out that both Ashton and Oliva, for the most part, have not had a ton of new things at the show. Oliva introduced their first entirely new line last year in the form of the Gilberto. Ashton introduced Symmetry a couple of years ago and then has had the two limited edition lines for San Cristobal and La Roma de Cuba. But other than that, it's basically been like, here's a little sampler pack and here's a new size for this line. It's not been, what you sort of get when you go to the Rocky booth. But those are two gigantic companies that are saying that they're not going to have anything new. And it's an interesting strategy to see because retailers, despite whatever they might complain about the problems of nothing new, they always want to know what's new. And Brooks, I mean, I'm sure you see this when you're at Elite down the road. I mean, customers also walk in and they want to know what's new.
Certainly. I think it's a big part of the business at this point. It's become a big part of the business. But retailers are also complaining about having too much new stuff, ironically enough. There's just not enough space. And,
retailers are hypocritical?
What? I think that they would complain regardless, some of them, but it's just a matter of it's a matter of all of these things coming together with the FDA and all this other stuff coming together that some of these companies just don't want to deal with it at the moment. And perhaps they'll come up with something new, after the show or something of that nature. But I think that it's definitely I definitely think that it's something that we can look at, especially with the numbers that we have here, and see that it's a trend.
Yeah. So on the list of people that aren't here, last year we had 23 people tell us that they were not going to the trade show beforehand. In terms of confirmed, that list is currently at 29. So if you put those two together, you've got 43 companies out of the 160 or so that we contacted either aren't going to have anything new or won't be at the trade show. And those are people that have already said that. And there's some names on that list as well that are recognizable. It sounds like Padilla will not be at the trade show. He tells me that he's going to go to Napa instead, which I'm sure that I would rather go to Napa than the trade show.
Certainly.
Yeah, and I don't even particularly care for wine that much. But, so there's a host of companies on there. There's some other ones, some smaller and medium-sized companies, but certainly ones that are notable. Paul Gramarian's not going to be there. They've been at the trade show for like 20-some-odd straight years. He won't be exhibiting at the trade show. And there's some other companies. I think what the most common trend is not the Padilla, let's go to Napa trend. It's more the, I'm going to go to the trade show, but I'm not going to have a booth. I'm going to be there walking around. I'm going to pay to get a badge, or I'm going to get a badge from someone else, and we're not going to tell anyone about it. And so I might run into a couple of retailers and say hi and, maybe take some orders and hopefully not get caught by the IPCPR, but I'm not going to spend the money to exhibit. And
certainly the vast majority of people that I've talked to that have said they were not going, not exhibiting, have said that they will be there and they'll be walking around. So that's certainly
there's no water.
The case.
Keep talking.
So I
could have picked up where you left off yesterday when we were doing mic testing.
To say.
Anyway, look, I think people have to be able to look at the IPCPR and the IPCPR convention and trade show as a business. And so if you take all the money that you spend at the trade show, so that's the exhibiting costs, the shipping costs, the travel, the meals, all the expenses, and then you run them against the orders that you get, and then I would even go so far as to say you also need to be looking at, each one of those orders. Did the retailer that placed that order, is that a new account? Is that an existing account? If it was an existing account, did they place a bigger order? Did they bring in new lines? And what kind of discount did I give them? And you got to be able to run those numbers. I'm not saying that the trade show needs to be profitable from a bottom line standpoint, but I think a lot of companies just look at, okay, I spent X amount of money and we brought in Y amount in sales, and that's probably not the best way to look at it, because some of those orders would probably have come in if you weren't at the trade show, and some of them maybe weren't. And once again, I think a lot of companies would be okay losing a little bit of money because it's an investment in new accounts, an investment in getting your name out there. Perhaps you have Brooks come by your booth and take some samples, and maybe they get reviewed on Half Wheel or another blog or whatever. But I think a lot of times many of these retailers, particularly in the 2012, or not retailers, manufacturers in 2012, 2013, 14, were just going to the trade show because that's what everyone did, and there's always this feeling that if you aren't at the trade show, it sort of feels like your company's fallen off the map. And one of the problems with that is that generally speaking, people that don't go to the trade show generally fall off a map, and it usually is not a good sign. But I think we're going to see in sort of the newer era that some of these smaller companies have just realized that they can't make the numbers work, and it makes sense to stay home. And that's a healthy decision that the industry collectively needs. It cannot be the case that every single manufacturer goes to the trade show. It's unsustainable. Anything else?
No, I agree 100% with what you said.
That's the first time in history. All right. So next up, we've been tracking. If you've been on Halfwheel recently, you've inevitably seen a lot of stories about what's going on in the cigar industry. And one of those things is we've been posting a lot about IPCPR, and we have seen a ton of news stories about new cigars. And somebody was in here yesterday, Kevin from Rockefeller Cigars Brooks, asked us this exact question about, the new cigars that you're seeing people announce. Are you seeing new lines or are you seeing extensions? And I was pretty adamant that we've seen extensions. I think that's been the case for you as well.
Absolutely. It's a very obvious trend.
Yeah. And so I did run the numbers. It's not a great comparison because the dates are a little off. So last year, about a week before the show, we had 223 new SKUs that we had written about and marked as trade show related SKUs. Currently, we're at 99. I'd like to point out that we're about 15 days away from the trade show. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. I know just based off what we've done this week that there's probably about 40 SKUs that aren't on there. And given kind of the news stories we have in the queue for today, there's probably another 15, 20 SKUs coming pretty shortly thereafter that. So that number will get closer to 223. I think there's a good chance it could get to 223 because all it takes is a couple companies. There's some companies that normally announce things before the trade show, like Alec Bradley, Rocky Patel, Gurkha certainly are in there, that usually announce things more than a week out from the show that really have not announced much. And then there's also the companies, the big companies. So if we look at the 5 largest companies as far as I consider them to be, which in no order would be Altadis, General, Davidoff, Drew Estate, and Fuente, those companies have announced a combined 3 new SKUs, and new is a questionable one for the trade show. But whatever the case is, there's a lot of releases coming. I think Davidoff is done. I don't think they have anything else new. And Fuente typically doesn't have a ton new, but certainly General, Altadis, and Drew Estate are going to have some new products, and some of those will be announced before the trade show. I would venture to guess that, particularly with Altadis in general, most of them will not be announced until the trade show actually opens. So there will be new cigars, just maybe not as much as last year. I sort of predicted that we were likely headed down that road. I think we're going to close the gap a little bit, but I certainly don't expect there to be as many new cigars as there were last year. And I expect a ton of them to be line extensions and not new lines, and a lot of limited line extensions.
Yeah, I mean, it all sounds like that's exactly what's going to happen.
Great. I think we should have mixed these up so that way we wouldn't have had me talking for as much as we're about to have me talking. So, this is where we're going to get to the inside baseball part. So I guess if you aren't in the cigar industry, stick around for the questions. We got 3 more topics to cover, and then we'll answer questions like, am I flying American Airlines down to the trade show?
Yes, is the answer.
That was a legitimate question. So the TA double dip. So as I mentioned earlier, the most...
Don't get him started on platinum status. It's
not platinum. It's executive platinum. CK.
See?
So the most direct comparison trade show to IPCPR is probably Intertobacco, which is a trade show that takes place in Germany. It's an international trade show. It's much bigger. It's all tobacco products, so cigarettes, e-cigarettes, vaping products, smokeless tobacco, etc. But it's a trade show where there are booths. We call them stands in Germany. They're generally by the German distributors, not by the companies themselves. There are retailers, generally from Germany, that come by and place orders. There are no discounts because that's legal in Germany. But that trade show very much functions in a similar manner to IPCPR. However, when it comes down to what IPCPR is most about, which would be basically retailers buying as much product as possible, the most direct comparison would be the Tobacconists Association of America annual meeting, which is known as the TAA. And so the TAA is a group of about 80 retailers. It's invite only, and it's 80 of essentially the largest independent retailers in America. So companies like Cigars International and JR Cigar are not part of TA. Some of the smaller is not the best word because they're still gigantic cigar retailers, but some of the people that have catalogs that are not as big as JR and CI and Famous are members of the TA. But generally speaking, it's the big independent retailers. And the TA show generally takes place in late March or early April. This year it got delayed because of a hurricane. It got moved from St. Martin to Casa de Campo in the Dominican Republic because the hotel in St. Martin was destroyed. And it also got pushed back further down the road. And so without getting too technical, one of the things that happens at TAA is they have a little trade show where people have a little table like this and somebody comes by and places an order. And the discounts are pretty big sometimes, and oftentimes I would say they're probably bigger than the discounts that are offered at IPCPR. And then they also have a separate buying event called the Dream Machine. And the Dream Machine is basically a collective buying agreement. So to put this in very basic terms, let's say Brooks had Brooks Cigar Company and Brooks was at the TAA.
That's a horrible name.
It might work. And so Brooks said, look, I'm going to offer you guys a 10% discount if collectively you place $100,000 in orders, 20% discount for $200,000, 30% for $300,000. If you get to $400,000, it's 40% off. That is a distilled version down of what the Dream Machine works, of how it works. And so the idea there, obviously, is that between the 80 retailers, if they can try to get to that $400,000 number, it benefits everyone. Maybe not so much Brooks. His margin has gone to shit. But for the retailers, they're getting massive amounts of discounts for placing a gigantic order collectively.
Is it actually called the Dream Machine?
It is called the Dream Machine.
Interesting.
So they have that. This year, they did a virtual Dream Machine, which is the first time they've done that, to my knowledge. So it was a non-person to in-person Dream Machine. It was done earlier in the year because many of the TA retailers, including some that we know quite well, basically do their buying. They try to do the bulk of their buying twice a year. They do it basically once in March at the TA, and then they do it again at the trade show. But because the TA had been pushed to being in late April, it started the 29th of April and went into May. That meant for a lot of those retailers that their buying patterns had sort of been disrupted. And so they did a virtual Dream Machine around March. They did the TA show in basically the first week of May, and now you're going to have the trade show. And so one interesting thing that cigar consumers do not care about, but people in the industry are certainly, I think, going to be a little bit nervous about is what do those TA retailers do at the trade show? Because they've had two other opportunities to get really big discounts throughout the year with a lot of these manufacturers, and that also means that they're probably a little bit more loaded up on products than they normally would be heading into IPCPR. And so I think there's a legitimate question, particularly with a handful of manufacturers, about how big the TA retailers are going to go at the trade show. And the TA retailers are very important in IPCPR because they're still 80 of the 100 or so largest independent retailers in the country. And the IPCPR show is really not about the Cigars Internationals and the Famous. It's really about the independent retailers. And so the TA is the cream of the crop for the most part. There's certainly a handful of stores, maybe a bit more than a handful. There's certainly a dozen or so stores that aren't TA members that probably should be. But it really does represent the big buying that takes place at IPCPR, at least amongst the retailers, maybe not so much the distributors. So hopefully you didn't fall asleep there. That's what happened. That slide got repeated twice. So we've skipped over some number issues here. And we are now into California Retailers 2.0. And I'm going to leave this up on the screen so I can get through it as quickly as possible. So July 1 last year, do you know what happened? Do you know what happened July 1 last year?
Not specifically. I'm assuming it has something to do with the California Retailer Tax.
Yeah, it does have something to do with the California Retailer Tax. So it was bumped up dramatically. It went from, I don't have the numbers in front of you, but something like 28.57%. It was always a weird number, to about 67%. So what that meant is that cigars in California got a lot more expensive. However, what most companies did and what a lot of retailers in California tried to do was they placed orders in June ahead of time, because as long as the product was on their shelves or in their stores before July 1, they could have the old tax. So they placed massive orders in June, which meant that everyone had not everyone, but a lot of manufacturers had a fantastic June. And the California retailers, some of them did go to the trade show, but I don't think they did very much buying. And in some cases, most notably the Taiwan TAA, the California retailers were actually shipped product that wasn't available anywhere else early, just so that they wouldn't have to pay the larger tax on it, and it wouldn't have to be passed down to consumers. And so, like I mentioned, there were retailers last year from California that were at the trade show walking around. However, they were not doing very much buying, if any buying at all. So this is going to be the first year where we're going to see the California retailers at the trade show and buying at the trade show. And I think it's going to be interesting to see because California is a big scattered market with a lot of retailers. It's not as sort of sexy is maybe not the best word here, but it's not as cool or looked at in the same manner as markets like Florida or Texas or even Georgia. But California is a gigantic market, and that tax is very, very large problem. And given that the trade show is in Vegas, it's easy for a lot of, particularly the Southern California retailers, can just drive over. The Northern California retailers, it's not that bad either. They're a big part of who shows up at the trade show, and it's going to be fascinating to see this year what kind of buying they do. And it's also it's sort of a reality now of we're going to have to sort of watch as California retailers probably go out of business, unfortunately, just due to that crazy tax, which is now one of the highest in the nation. Anything else about California?
No, I remember specifically talking to people last year, talking about that, and that they were exactly what you said. They were just walking around and not buying anything because they'd already purchased all their stuff. So, yeah, very interesting.
All right. So, last thing, 4 questions. So there's new IPCPR leadership. Patrick says that my mic is blocking my face. That might be intentional. So there's new IPCPR leadership. Scott Pierce is the new executive director of the IPCPR. He replaces Mark Purcell, who was the CEO. There is no CEO title now. I've not met Scott Pierce. He is going to be one of our guests. I don't think he's going to be giving anything away, but he will be one of our guests on the Friday show. And it will be fascinating to talk to him and about what he's seen at the IPCPR. He's been on the job for a little over a month now. And I think a little over a month. And, his input likely will not have very much to do with how this trade show is being run. I don't think he was necessarily brought in to run the trade show. Mark Purcell was very much someone that had a ton of experience running a much larger trade show than IPCPR, and it was very clear that when they brought him in, it was to fix a lot of the problems of the trade show. And I think in some degree, a lot of them have been fixed. If you talk to anyone that goes to the trade show other than half-wheel team members, they will likely say there's a million problems about the trade show. People don't show up and bowling down an aisle and all sorts of things. But there were some archaic practices that the IPCPR trade show was using, and Mark certainly helped and Dawn and the rest of the team there, I think, helped to fix a lot of those. Certainly still some issues. Mark Purcell's tenure will likely be remembered for, obviously the FDA issues, but also being thrown out of the Venetian, which we're going back to next year. So I'm not sure that Scott will have had much to do with how this year's trade show is. I'm sure there's certainly some things, but it's going to be interesting to see his thoughts on the organization. I think, one thing I'm going to be interested to ask him, and we'll ask him, is why do we think the IPCPR hired him, and what were his skill sets that were unique to what the IPCPR is looking for at the moment, because I do think that it seems like there's been a much more concerted effort by them to try to work on member relations and those sorts of things, and I certainly think that would be a category where you would say the IPCPR has been lacking for much of the last few years, if not for a while. So, new leadership, but Scott's really the only one that's new, I would say, at the IPCPR, but he is certainly their boss. The board turned over last year, I guess, or moved positions last year, but the person that's in charge of running the trade show is still very much there, and the people that work underneath them are still there. Anything else with new leadership, Brooks?
No, I haven't met Scott either, so I look forward to it.
All right, so we're going to see if we've got this under control. Because it's time for, I guess, me clicking on that didn't do anything for you. It's time for me to hit Command J, apparently. All right, so Patrick has sent in a list of questions, and we are going to go through them. If you have any questions, I would recommend getting them written down in the comment section right now before Patrick and I log off. So, first question comes from Sam Lopez, who is the owner of Fine Ash Cigars, which is the store where the Casado Reserva Corona Gorda, our #1 cigar of the year, was from.
Great stick.
He says that the weekend hurt me. I hate being away from the shop on the busiest days of the week.
I don't think that's a question.
Yep. Not a question. Mike Pfeiffer, who I think is known as Pizza Mike. What's your favorite kind of pizza? That's a question.
Why do you always look at the fat man?
Well, I was trying to think of what mine is.
Oh, okay. Well, you gonna answer? Or you want me to?
No, I'm still trying to decide between two.
Well, I go with the pepperoni and basil with extra sauce, but that's just me.
Is there like a style?
Maybe breakfast bacon. Good stuff. No, I don't like deep dish.
Well, it's not really pizza, but
The
like
balance of the
balance of
the balance of the crust and the sauce has to be correct.
But like, what's the crust style? Are we getting like,
Just regular, man. Hand tossed crust.
so like a Domino style?
No, I don't eat Domino's. That's for gross.
I don't know.
Gross
You haven't
stuff.
specified it. You just said some ingredients,
All right,
extra
well,
sauce.
that's all I got.
All right, I am. Torn.
I make my own. I make my own pizza.
I do not want to have any of that. I'm torn between good old margarita, a big fan of buffalo mozzarella, or a New York style slice with cheese. I don't mind extra ingredients, but there is something just about the fold and the sauce and the cheese. Dylan Austin just says hello. Kim Anderson
Not a question.
says you're so smart, Brooks, which is not a question and false. Frank Sinagra asked, will there be a keynote speaker this year? Yes, there is. And I forget who it.
He hasn't written that down.
I forget who it is. It is not someone as famous as Rudy Giuliani. I feel like it's someone that was in a movie or had a movie about them. Let's see. We're gonna look this up. Maybe they haven't announced it yet. There is a keynote speaker. I was told of who it was back in like October. But the IPCPR doesn't appear to have announced it yet. So I guess we'll have to get back to you on whether or not that they've announced it, just not there.
But we're pretty sure he was either in a movie or had a movie made about them.
Yeah, but it wasn't
one
like
or the
Sully. But yeah. Justin Nelson wants to know, how does the trade show layout and number of companies compare to the boom times? I was not there during the boom times. I also don't know if we have any maps to really get a sense of that, but just knowing what I know about where those trade shows were hosted, I have to imagine the trade show was still much smaller. We were in much smaller convention centers than where we are at the moment. So that's my best guess. I could be completely wrong, but unless like the Cincinnati Convention Center is a lot different than what I know it to be.
We certainly didn't have 6,000 square feet of places to eat.
We have more than 6,000. That's just one of the three places. That's inside the convention hall. That doesn't count. I mean, the Las Vegas Convention Center is massive, but we'll not get into that. David Richard Williams II wants to know, will there be some one-on-one with all of the manufacturers? I don't know what you're exactly talking about, but I'm going to try to answer this as best I can. If you're asking, are we going to have one-on-one interviews with all of the manufacturers? No. We're only going to have one-on-one interviews with a handful of them. It's just not something I think we could do efficiently. We will be doing booth-by-booth coverage. We are going to try to cover as many companies as possible. We are going to particularly try to cover Southern Draw and Caldwell Cigar Company this year, since we did not last year by accident.
Sorry about that.
But we will do our booth coverage as normal, and then we'll have interviews. I guess if I had to take a guess, probably with 10 or 11 companies plus Scott from the IPCPR, because we have 8 companies planned for Friday and then 3 throughout. We may have more people stop by on Friday, but that's at least the plan. But certainly we're not going to have an interview with every single company. It just is not what we do. There are other cigar blogs that I think do that, maybe. Trying to think.
I can't think of one, though.
Well, no, I mean, like, So Your Review used to. I don't know what they're doing now, though. So I don't want to, like, I don't know what So Your Review's plans are for the 2018 IPCPR Convention and Trade Show. But certainly, So Your Review, Blind Man's Puff, Cigar Federation, the sort of some of the more video-oriented people do those interviews. I guess during our booth coverage, we will have the, like, 1 minute to 2 minute long videos, but those aren't really an interview. It's just someone talking from the companies. So hopefully that answers your question. David, if you want further clarification, ask below, or if you don't have time, maybe during one of the other videos. Tim McCabe wants to know, do you guys think it's going to be more of a rebrand of older blends due to the FDA? I certainly think that's going to continue to increase. I don't think it's going to be the majority of it, but I mean, we've already seen Rocky Patel's, got the Old World Reserve coming back. Davidoff's got Diademus Finis. I mean, what's old is new has been the common theme for the last 18 months. But Certainly, if I look over the cigars that we reported on now, it's still a pretty small percentage of what has been reported on so far. But, that I guess could change. There certainly is time for it. Casey Johnson wants to know, will I be flying American Airlines? I will be flying American Airlines to Vegas. Mike Pfeiffer wants to know boxers or briefs, which I don't think anyone really wants to know the answer of other than maybe Mike. And we've already answered one of his questions, so I don't feel compelled to answer that. Patrick wants us to get back to the video, so we'll do that, I suppose.
Not a question.
Nope. What was Justin Nelson wants to know, what was the trade show like? Oh, we already did that. On Fawn from Drew State wants to know, will there be more Lanceros this year? Don't think so. I know we had the Foundation announced one yesterday. Crown Heads has one, the 4 Kicks Maduro. Any other ones you can think of?
No. When's the Ratzilla Lancero coming out?
Another one that we reported on. Oh, Villiger has that Lancero.
The new one, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce it, but
yeah. Sorry for hitting the table.
500 boxes of 25.
No, I mean, there have been a couple Lanceros. I would say we have seen probably less than
5.
I think we probably right at 5 because we managed to get to 3, and I know there's at least another line that had a Lancero in it that I just can't think of. Well, a Lancero-ish size. Saka is going to preview the Muestra de Saka #NB something or other. But the Muestra de Saka Lancero is going to be previewed. I don't know if they're going to take orders for it. So that's 4 at least. So I think we're probably less than 10 at the moment, and I imagine it'll be right around 10 when we get there. So I think, unless we aren't working Slack correctly, I think that answers all the questions that we've gotten. Oh, no, there's a couple. Joshua Cruz wants to know, no app this year so far. Have you all used the app in the past? I guess the answer is yes. Brian Burt is a big fan of the app. I use it and then find myself not using it by like day 3.
I found it very helpful.
So yeah, we definitely use the app. Justin Harris wants to know, what's the official after party spot this year? What's interesting is we thought about doing a post, and we may still do it, about all the sort of nightlife. I know Romacraft's going to have their hospitality booth, I believe, at the Venetian again.
Always a good time.
I don't know if I should mention, because there's some invite only hospitality places, but Romacraft's is, you sort of have to get an invite, but you have to get an invite, I guess, is technically, but a lot of invites are given out. There's certainly some other companies that are doing that they're having after parties or hospitality rooms. I would say that I don't know what's at the Venetian and the Palazzo, so I don't know what that bar is going to look like. But last year there was quite a few people actually at the bar that we used to hang out at in the Palazzo. It's no longer in its current spot, and I don't think that the last time I read Eater Las Vegas, I don't think they had announced anything about that. There's quite a few people at the SLS bar, which is a hotel that's near the convention center where a lot of people stay, including us. And it sounds like there's going to be more people this year. More people found out about that. I took a walk by the Westgate bar at one point, and there were certainly some people there. And then I ran out because it's the Westgate.
Good call.
I know some people go to the Wynn. It's not like the Venetian where there's like one centralized spot and it's a complete mess. I'm sure when we get back to the Venetian, so long as there is a place for us to smoke, then we will have that there. All right. Any other questions, Patrick? Are we good to go? I know you have a lunch to go to. I think we're good to go. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to go through the outros. So thank you for tuning into this one. Hopefully the next one will not have as many technical difficulties as this one did. To give you an idea of how our next shows are going to go, assuming the internet loads here, I will give you that rundown of a list. For those interested in the contest, I will announce the winner once we log off here. And you'll just need to contact us, and then we will send your name over to Drew Estate and all your information after we finish up with the 5th show. Once again, because the items aren't being announced until the trade show and aren't being shown off, I would say August 1st would be about the date that you should expect it at the earliest for your item to show up. Why is that not loading? So we've got 5 cigars you're looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we're going to do that because last year we did like everyone just submitted one, but it'll be, I think, you and I. So we'll probably need to do maybe more than 5 cigars. 5 accessories, same story there. Companies to watch.
Yes.
Something else that we haven't figured out what it's going to be, but we have agreed to do a 5th video.
Yes.
This isn't loading. Anyway, so the post schedule will be up. You'll see another one on Facebook. There should be at least 2 next week and then 2 the following week. And then obviously the one on Friday the 13th, as well as we'll have, I guess it's late morning, depending on where you are, or early afternoon of July 14th, July 15th, and July 16th, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then we'll have daily end of the day post, which will go up at like, I guess, 6 p.m. West Coast time or 9 p.m. if you're in the East. And those will be Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so July 14th through the 17th. I think that's it. Anything else?
No, I've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think Brooks will be on a few more of these, but not all of them. He needs to learn how to work the iPad and the app that we're using, not an iPad. I feel confident that he knows how to work an iPad.
I think I do, yes.
All right, so once again, thank you all for tuning in, and good luck for whoever was in the contest. Patrick has to go to lunch, and we've got to get back to work. Don't forget to check out halfwheel.com for more information. We've got a review coming today of, you can't see it at the moment because there's a ton of glare, but the Davidoff Diademus Finis 50th anniversary, as well as, I don't know what else today. FDA news, lawsuit news, and more
Probably
cigars.
some more new cigar stuff.
All right.